I wouldn't be put off by crashes, or quite often that's the time when you can actually go forward.
I agree with that.
That's the time to buy.
That's the time to buy, because the market's rock bottom, and if you buy at that time, and if you hold, the price is only going to go. It's an upward trajectory. A woman can make and break a man. I had a divorce in 2012. I didn't work as hard, I didn't work as smart because I was emotionally disturbed. And then when I focused again, now I'm back on track.
That sort of made a lot of people think. A couple of years of no man's land, and it's a very difficult time for a lot of us. It's like catching falling knives.
Welcome to Bricks to Riches podcast. Today I have a very special guest with me, Mr. Gary Jackson from DeTRAFFORD Estates. Welcome, Gary.
Thank you, Nabil.
How are you today, sir?
I'm rather marvellous, thank you.
I must thank you for making time out of your busy schedule.
Yeah, pleasure.
Now, Gary, I've known you a long time. I've known you as a friend, and we had an old mutual friend, Mr. Frank Summerfield.
Yes, wonderful chap.
Yeah, you've been in property for 40 years, Gary.
Yes.
In that 40-year journey, you started off selling potatoes door to door.
Yes.
How did that get you into property? I want to know from the beginning what made the transition from from potatoes to property, from one P to another P.
Yes. Okay, good way of putting it. Yeah. And I think it's just that. If you're selling a pack of potatoes, you make 10p profit, and you might knock on a door, and at 13, 14, it's quite nerve-wracking to knock on a stranger's door and say, "Excuse me, would you like to buy a packet of potatoes, please? £5 for 34 pence." And the lady might say, "Oh, I'm all right, love, thanks. I've got plenty this week." He said, "Could I give you a call next week, please?" "Oh, no, I've got them under the sink. They're sprouting and everything." And I say, "May I call in a month, perhaps?" And then they might close the door in your face and say no as they do it. But you always know you're going to sell about 6 packets an hour, and you make 10p on each packet.
So that's 60p.
60p. But you're thinking of goodwill. You're thinking of the future. You're not thinking of today's profit. So you're carrying on.
Yes.
And then one day, through carrying on, it's a bit like stem cell stimuli. You come up with another idea that you bolt onto the old idea. And the new idea, I got 40 little cute packets, which cost me £4.40, and went knocking on the doors and said, "May I give you a free sample of our potatoes, please, to try?" And often persons will say, "Well, you can, love, but I tell you now, we're not having any." I said, "Fine, it's absolutely fine. There's no obligation. Please try them," and walk away. And then immediately the lady would say, "Go on, so what are you doing? What are you doing? Go on, tell me." "Oh, you're asking me the questions." I thought, instead of saying £5 for 34p, I may as well try and sell a larger pack for £1.80 and make £1.30 profit. And I found that I got around 20 customers an hour that way, and I made £1.30 each time. And all of a sudden, it sort of allowed me to shift from a non-profit making position to having lots of money coming in. And at the time, terrace houses were £4,000 each.
But don't go back to the potatoes, Gary.
Yes.
Were you knocking on yourself, or did you have a team of door knockers?
No, I used to do everything myself, every job myself. You would have some help at some stages as you evolved. But initially, you didn't really know anybody. And my own dad, who is a potato merchant, and we used to have a pig farm, and that's how we started. Well, you wouldn't expect someone to start by being on a pig farm, but it did stand us in good stead, because it's very funny when you live on a pig farm in the city centre, because you've got no country kids to bother with, and none of the city kids want to hang out with someone off a pig farm. It was a little bit like the Beverly Hillbillies when we got dropped off at school in a pig truck.
Right.
But exciting times. And one of the things that I discovered from making from 10p to £1.30 in one delivery was that I could soon make that £3 and £4 by doing small veg hampers and also selling other things. And then after a few years, the urge was, well, why not buy some of these properties?
But you're very brave, Gary, and confident young man to knock on doors, sell potatoes. I presume that bravery, that strength, that confidence, you deployed that in the property field. That's why you were successful in the property industry.
Thank you. I think I tried. I did honestly have a tough time when I was about 23, I think. I wrote to lots of mill owners to see if they would meet me for the prospect of me buying a mill off them. But they started coming back to me saying, yes, can you meet me on Thursday at 2:00? I know, it was quite nerve-wracking. Because you think the owner of a big mill is a big person. It's the same as you and me.
Yes.
We're all the same.
Exactly.
And so I was so afraid I joined the Dale Carnegie course. And then I was so afraid of the Dale Carnegie course because we had to do 2 speeches a week at, say, Bolton Town Hall or Bury Town Hall. People 70, 80 people who you don't know. And I was so afraid of that. I quickly called at the mill owners on the way. I'm like, well, they haven't got much time, so I can... Do we need architects? 96 windows. Should we say 48 flats? 2 windows a flat. And in the late 80s, around 87, 88, it'd be something like, say, 250,000 quid for a mill, subject to planning for 48 flats. And then you only get 35. But 89, the market soared. And people were offering you £500,000 for something you just paid $250,000 for. And you thought, wow, you could easily make a lot of money doing this. But it isn't that easy. Because in 91, the market drops. And then not only do you lose your money, you're minus 600,000 quid. And you've got £2,000 a week in interest to find.
To pay the bank.
To pay the bank and your expenses.
But Gary, just to make it for the viewers easy.
Yes.
So basically, when you sold potatoes, then you got into property. What years were you in potatoes? What years? How many years did you do in potatoes?
I did potatoes till I was 19.
And then when did you get into property?
19.
And then what was the first property you bought?
So the first property was a terrace house with a gable end problem.
Where was the house?
That was in Reddish. In
Not
Stockport.
Reddish, yeah.
And I paid 11,000, and me and my wife bought it, and we did it up, sold it, and then the most memorable scheme for me was my first real scheme, which was 6 apartments. That, again, was in Reddish. It was an old manor house.
You converted it?
Converted it to 6 apartments, and I called it Cane Gardens after my son. And now he's 38, and that's when I finished it, 38 years ago. But the interesting thing there was the local agents, as good as they weren't able to sell the apartments. So a lot of people at the time were more interested in buying terrace houses in some areas than others. And so because of my door-to-door potato experiences, I thought, well, I've got to do something because the only money I've got is tied up in this project.
In the apartment project?
In the apartment project. Yeah. So I went down to Heaton Moor, which is about 1.5 miles away, and all the houses where they've got fire escapes, so that they clearly didn't appear to be mortgageable, but very nice cars parked on the drives. So I figured it was people who were working and earning a reasonable amount. So I knocked on the doors and said, may I give you a set of details of a scheme I've just finished up the road? And the next thing, I would say, I don't know if you've seen Barrett's on the television, £99 a move in. And of course, I'm not Barrett's, but you're associating a concept, making it clearer in that short time that you've got, that short window. And we did a lot of £99 a move in properties. So people that were paying £60 a week rent all of a sudden could buy one off me and only pay £46 a week in mortgage. And you've given them a free deposit. I know that doesn't happen now, but at the time, that did happen. Yeah. And within 3 days, I sold all 6 apartments. And one of the persons, marvellous chap, he was a mechanic in a small garage, and he said, look, I don't need a property to live, but I would buy one off you if you could rent it out for me. Can you rent it out? Very much like Richard Branson said in his book, you've got to assume responsibility and get on with it. I said, yes. And he actually bought 6 off me over 3 years, and up to about 5 or so years back, he still had them all paid for, probably worth £1.5 million now. So and, it's something he wouldn't have otherwise had. The one thing I admire about that chap, and it's a good lesson for us all, is he's steadily developed that muscle-making the decision-making muscle, that allowed him to quickly go from another one, steadily rather, another one, but keeping it neat, rather than being erratic, getting another 5 or 10 at once. And we all know we can trip up when we go too fast, and we all know we can lose our nerve at those points.
So slow and steady won the race for this gentleman.
Yeah.
And also, Gary, in your 40-year career, you've seen highs and lows.
Yes.
You've seen recessions, probably 2.
Yes.
If not 3. You've seen the credit crisis. I've seen 2 recessions, 1 credit crisis. What did you learn from those experiences? What would you like to feedback? Would you like to give the listeners?
It's
viewers?
quite
Because lots of people want to get into property,
Yeah.
and they aspire to be like you.
Yeah.
So, what tips would you give people?
Well, I wouldn't be put off by crashes, or quite often that's the time when you can actually go forward.
I agree with that.
It's a
That's the
safe
time
way
to
up.
buy. That's the time to buy because the market's rock bottom, and if you buy at that time, and if you hold, the price is only going to go up. It's an upward trajectory.
It's just as you've experienced and I've experienced this, you can have the aftermath around your neck whilst you're trying to evolve in the next up wave. And my experience in 91 was I was minus the 600,000 quid that I mentioned earlier, £2,000 a week in interest, and lots of funny little issues that you're dealing with every day, rather than before when you were free to just get on with making some money. But in my case, 91 to 92, I made a net of £1,000 after all the interest. So I owed 599 at the end of 92. But I felt, that's the craziest thing. I felt good about that. I'm now on the mend
because you relieved all the pressure.
I'm going in the right direction. You found your sort of your route, and I paid everybody off by 95, and then for 95 to I think around 2003 and 4, I felt there was going to be a crash then. But listen, in your class at school, we're all half right.
Yeah.
If you said there's going to be a crash, half will be right. If you said there's going to be an upwave, half will be right. Yeah. Which one do you want to do? How do you want to live your life?
Nobody knows the future.
No.
Because if you look at the credit crunch in 2007, there's lots of casualties. If the likes of Northern Rock, Lehman Brothers were going down, those are financial institutions with a huge financial brain. They went down. They didn't know about the credit crunch. The government bailed out banks like RBS, NatWest.
Yes.
So if they're getting it wrong and they're multi-billion-pound companies, so the rest of the economy didn't know.
Yeah.
And the people who survived that credit crunch, Gary, as you know, there were organisations that got support from the government. It's a tough experience for property developers.
That sort of made a lot of people think. And then it was almost like a couple of years of no man's land and what's like catching falling knives. And it's a very difficult time for a lot of us.
Because property values halved overnight.
Yeah.
But a lot of people actually made money, Gary, in that time because people who lost value, property values lost half the value, but a lot of people bought property then, and then they held it on for a few years, it doubled up and they sold out. So they cashed in, they took the chips off the table.
Yes.
So it's a good opportunity. Property markets like gravity, whatever goes up must come down. So when it comes down, buy, and at the height, sell up.
Well, a very good example, I would say, to help people is, and a friend of mine who is, I suppose, has been a guru to me, and it's a chap called Roy Hall, who has built a cash and carry group up, which then sold out to Nisa Foods. And
is this guy, Roy, your mentor? Is he the one that's been helping you, guiding you?
Well, yes, because he said something, and this is the bit I want to share, because I think what you were alluding to then was cashing your chips and all of this. And the one thing he said to me, he said, Gary, you're very good at what you do.
I agree with
Slow down and do less. Because you can do too much of it.
You mean quality over quantity?
Yes.
I experienced that, Gary. In 2007, I can remember I had a meeting with you. I did.
Yes.
In Hale Village.
Yes.
I had a property called 3 Carlos Place.
Yes, I remember that. Yes.
And you tried to buy it. You viewed it. We spoke about the price. The deal was about to go through.
Yeah.
I wanted 3.5 million.
Yes.
You offered 3, and because you're a very good negotiator.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And because you only make money when you buy.
Yeah.
And over that £500,000 discrepancy, we didn't actually transact.
Yes.
But from there, we built a very good friendship and long-term
Yes, we did.
relationship.
That's
You're a
the main
friend of
thing.
mine and my family, and I really do appreciate you coming here. But that's
Yes.
at that time, I thought, wow, this guy's good at his job because
Yeah.
you're a hard negotiator. You don't
Yeah.
get emotionally involved.
Yeah.
Some people get emotionally involved, say, oh, I want that postcode, Carlos Place, Mayfair. I'll pay that premium. But
Yes.
you stuck to your guns.
Yes.
I like the way you transact. I like the way you negotiate, Gary.
Yes, thank you.
That's commendable.
Thank you.
And that's the advice I'd give my followers, is always look at the numbers of a property when buying. Don't get emotionally involved.
Yeah,
Some
yeah.
people like to pay a premium just for the postcode. I always say, look at the numbers.
Yeah. I mean, it's true as far as the business
Yeah.
is concerned. As far as the life's concerned,
Yeah.
I think sometimes I've lost out not having the house I loved because I've been thinking to sell it sooner or not pay the full price, therefore I don't get it, when it's the one you love. But set that aside. If you're building a portfolio, the figures have got to be right.
Yeah, of course. I totally agree.
And the timing.
Personal,
Yeah.
you can pay a premium, but business, you should not be emotionally involved.
Yes.
And I agree with the point you just on. Everything in life's about timing.
Yeah.
What time to sell, what time to buy. Everything's
Yes.
about timing.
Yes.
Even talking about love lives, for example,
Yeah, yeah.
timing when you meet a life partner, you have to
Yes.
be in the right place at the right time.
Yes.
And then if you're not there, if you're a minute late or early, you might miss that person.
Yes.
So going on about love life and timing,
Yes.
Gary, because you're a seasoned practitioner, you're older than me, more experienced than me.
Yes.
But I won't say you're better looking than me though, Gary. but Gary, the question I'd like to ask you, my friend, is a woman can make and break a man. Personally, I had a divorce in 2012. And when I had that divorce, I took my foot off the pedestal in work. I didn't work as hard. I didn't work as smart because I was emotionally disturbed.
Yeah.
And it took me a few years to heal. And then when I focused again, now I'm back on track.
Yeah.
So some people can have a life partner who really catapults their career.
Yes.
And some people have a life partner who slows them down. So if you're driving a car on the motorway at 100 miles per hour, for example,
Yes.
with a partner who's helping you get there, or you can have a partner who's slowing you down, you're driving at 30 miles per hour. So what's your view of that? Because lots of young entrepreneurs ask me this question, Gary. How does love life affect your business relationship?
Well, with your work,
success.
you have to love your work and focus on it. And, you know, you do find... I was very fortunate. I had a lovely wife for 20 years and 4 children. And everything was perfect. And I think you do get carried away and miscommunicate sometimes. And then it's too late after you've realised that. But equally, you know, being an entrepreneur is being free and being out there and being a warrior.
Yes.
You can't do that and also be dominated by something that doesn't make sense. So you might do it temporarily, but you soon realise you've got to get on with what you want to do. And, you know, it's nice to be...
Gary, what I know of you, you're an alpha male.
Yeah, right.
You don't like to be dictated to what to do.
Yeah.
You want to continue your own life. And every human being has the right to live the life how they want.
Yes.
So whether you're male, female. So what the point is, how did you manage those situations when you had a divorce with your wife, or
Yes.
when you had a breakup? How did that affect your business?
I think for me, for me, it's strangely enough, I become addicted, as a lot of people can be addicted to drugs or alcohol. I was very fortunate to become addicted to crunching ice. And I used to crunch ice in my frustration in the evenings. I know it sounds outrageous, but I actually lost weight, had a clear mind, and focused every morning on my jobs that I needed to do. All them jobs that you don't want to do, that you'd like to do last, you do first. And, you know, for me, it was a very good time. You know, the big distractions, it's not necessarily a partner, it's the interruptions of alcohol and eating rich foods and not exercising properly. And then if you get those bit right, you know, you attract the right people that you're really going to connect with, and you go from there, don't you?
So your advice to young up-and-coming entrepreneurs is have a balanced diet, exercise, have discipline, basically, and then love life. That's not
You've got to prove yourself, haven't you? I mean, there's nothing like having a cold shower in the morning after you. I only put the shower on cold after having a warm shower, but it jolts you, and you think, rah, you've got to go. And if you've got that about you,
It wakes you up.
Yes.
The cold shower wakes you up because I go for cryotherapy.
Yes.
And it gives you a dopamine hit.
you know, it's a wonderful experience, and it's nice to know actually that you've not got all of the ticks correct, but you've got enough of them to feel confident to go forward. And here we are again. It's a very exciting time in the market, whilst we're down here, and the world's it's almost on a precipice.
Yes.
But it's what's new to us. Our working days like that.
Exactly.
So we're equipped to deal with these things the best we can.
We're seasoned practitioners.
Yes.
And also, Gary, one thing I would say that you're a very helpful person, even though we're both in the same industry.
Yes.
In effect, we're competitors.
Yes.
But we're still friends.
Yes.
So if I ever ring you, I want some help or advice, you're always there. If I ring you, I'm feeling a bit down, let's meet up, let's have a bite to eat. You're always very helpful and kind.
Yes.
So my advice to all the followers, all the listeners is, if your fellow colleagues need advice or help, always help out, because then the universe helps you.
Agreed. It's nice
always
to
help out.
Yeah, it's nice to help. Good therapy as well.
Okay, so it feels very good for the soul when you help someone.
Yeah.
But also, Gary, there's something I always see on your social media, on your Facebook, Instagram. You have this Northern Powerhouse where you have people like Tom Bloxham or all the fellow colleagues in the same industry. What is Northern Powerhouse?
It was a great movement created by a group of wonderful people in Manchester driving forward. And going forward, we've got great things happening. And one of the things that made me think was in the 1800s, when Manchester was the #1 city of the world, and we had the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, or just after the beginning, and then we started working abroad, and we had people saying to us in the Middle East, so you're from Great Britain? I'm like, whoa, steady on, we're not great. And we've been on the dole for several generations, but our forefathers were great. And that jolt that was created, I know it was followed up by George Osborne and so on, but the fundamentals were, we've reignited what we used to have, the Industrial Revolution. It's a great storyline. Any international investors buying government bonds in the UK, they know that we're not quitters. They know that originally, I used to do a Beijing city in the north by 2080, and people in the audience, and that some of them are new, and they say, yeah, but you'll be dead by 2080. Well, maybe, but I mean, if the Romans thought like that, we'd have not water now, would we? So, it's not just about the immediate profit.
It's a long term.
Yeah.
You've done a lot of development in Manchester. I've seen it with my own eyes. You're a great developer. I've been to some of your sites. I've been to Cavendish Buildings and Bowden, beautiful development.
Thank you.
And the one in Manchester on the way into Deansgate, that's Gardens. What's it called?
Roof Gardens.
That's very nice.
Yes.
And out of all those developments, what was your favourite development that you did?
It's difficult to think which one is the best one, because you're excited about your next one that doesn't exist yet. It's all in your head. But I do remember with the Roof Gardens, it was a great opportunity to create a collection of design. You've got like your New York Roof Gardens, you've got your 4-story Amsterdam Mews, you've got your Kensington Mews in the courtyards at the back, and you've got your Lancashire back-to-back terraces all blended into one scheme. And one of the things that I found was interesting about that, we did a Corten steel on the upper floor, which kind of resembles the rusty colour of a brick. And on the brick itself was a double-fired Danish clay, which was a grey. A marvellous brick, and twice the price of normal brick. But it resembles a slate. So it's the other way around. And
so we got the design team. Did you finalise the design yourself, or did you just take the architect's view?
It's always a team thing.
Yeah.
But I'd go around on the internet all around the world every night looking at other schemes, and then I went.
I like the passion you put into it.
Thank you. Yeah,
the desire, because you're making change for years to come. People drive past that building.
Yeah.
Your grandchildren say, "Our granddad built that."
That's nice. Yeah. One opportunity we had there was received a call from some architects in Copenhagen, And they said, we're coming to Manchester on such a date. Could you allow us to have a look round, please? And I said, certainly, yes. I went to meet them at 2:00 on such a day. And I thought maybe there's 2 or 3 architects. It was a full coach full of architects.
Really? And
for 2 hours, I showed them round. And they asked me so many questions. But the original ideas and the design were from Copenhagen. And I'm like, guys, you're the ones that originally designed this. How come you're so interested in the way I've done it? Yeah, so good experience.
So when you develop these sites, Gary, when you, first of all, building it, what's your biggest obstacle building it? Was it the delay in planning? Was it a design issue? Was it the cost of the build? Was it delay from contractors? What advice would you give up and coming developers? Because for me personally, I don't like the delay in planning, and because of Brexit, the cost of build's gone up. That's my experience as a developer. What did you experience from this? Was it from the obstacles of development?
Well, I think you've got to get your land right. And it looks like you're spending a lot of time before you start doing the obvious things.
Yes.
But if you don't do that, it won't ever work.
I agree.
And
you have to get your ducks in a row. You have to be extremely organised.
Yeah.
And when you're ready, that's when you lay the first brick.
Yes. And if you're doing the same building every time, that would be much easier. Yeah. But then that's not very exciting, is it? Because we're trying to do some more exciting things. Yeah. How do we go taller? How can we get the right net to gross?
Yes.
What can we include in the buildings? And what they're going to look like. And
aesthetically, aesthetics are important.
We can all design a wonderful looking building, but is it cost effective? What can we do? So some exciting things there that obviously time and experience.
But what's the biggest obstacle? Was it the build cost? Was it planning? What was your biggest issue that you faced in your 40-year career developing building?
You've got to make sure that you roll with it. You've got to roll with it. And you can't change anything. If it's going to take time on planning, be aware of that when you take the project on and understand why it's going to take time. And if it's not worth it, then you wouldn't do that project, would you?
Yeah.
But quite often...
What about delays? A lot of contractors, I deal with contractors.
Yeah.
When you go to tender, they'll promise you they'll have the site finished, for example, by the 9th of September.
Yeah.
But it'll be like 9th of December. And then if you promise the customer that delivery date, I'll give it you in the end of September.
Yeah.
That puts egg on your face. How do you deal with stuff
like that? It's true. But again, that's part of your job as a developer to not allow an opportunity where time's being wasted with the wrong people.
Yeah.
And I've done all those things. I've wasted time and, I've sort of spent lots of money to find out that it doesn't work. So it's very important to find out, is it going to work or not, in a very cost-effective manner. I think with somebody starting new, you've just got to tread carefully. But equally, doing a development is very different than doing a property investment. And of course, they need to know the difference of that. We all make the mistake of thinking, right, well, I've done 10 or so houses or whatever. I'm now going to do a development. Yeah. It's a completely different arena.
Yeah, definitely.
But if your passion is to do...
You've got loads of health and safety issues for a start from the development.
Yeah, well, this is where your big fees come in. You've got to pay the professionals to deal with that. And you've got to make sure you can afford to build into your budget.
And what about sales? Do you know, when I develop, I'm more of a wholesaler. I like to sell everything in one job lot, preferably to one customer, and they can retail those individual units out. But you sell, I can see online that you sell individually. Do you prefer selling individually, or would you like to sell as one job lot?
I think, your market changes, but a lot of the time we have sold direct to people.
End user.
Yeah.
Is that UK or overseas? Like both. People went to China, didn't they, to sell?
Yes. Both. And, we've delivered over the COVID period. It was quite difficult because you've got delays.
Yes.
And we just finished a scheme of 213 properties just now. And there's lots of happy buyers there because they secured their purchase the beginning of COVID. We spent lots of money finishing it. And yes, it's made a profit, but generally it's a very unique scheme. One of the things I found with building through COVID is the delays. and the extra interest charges.
Yeah.
And also, we had some design issues. We had some lease delays and so on, and extra costs.
That kills into the profit, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was very expensive for me throughout COVID, and it was quite pressurising, even though I've done it for 40 years.
Because nobody knew about COVID, did they?
No,
Yeah,
no.
nobody forecasted it in the financial appraisal.
There's lots of sort of, I suppose, experiences to have in life.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to the guy who I sort of held with high esteem, high regard, where he said, "You're very good at what you do. Slow down. You know, just do less, but do well."
Quality over quantity.
Yeah.
And also, Gary, what's the biggest development you ever done? Was it the Gardens one, or was it the Cavendish GDV? What's the biggest gross development value of a development that you did?
I'm not quite sure. I think through COVID we did probably the sales were around 175 million quid, something like that.
Wow, that's phenomenal.
For 641 properties.
175.
Yeah, approximately, or 176. May have cost me 186. I don't know, but it was a harrowing time. But we've done it, and you know, we've delivered it. They're there for everyone
And
to
the
see.
spec's good. I've seen your developments.
Yeah.
Good spec.
Yeah.
But me, as a seasoned practitioner as well, obviously you've got 10 years more experience than me, Gary. I've got 30 years. You've got 40.
Yeah.
But whenever I do a development, I look at 1/3 profit. So I summarize in my head, like you do a window analysis, how many apartments. I allow 1/3 for the land, 1/3 for the build cost, and 1/3 for profit.
Yeah.
If I'm not making that 1/3 profit, I won't waste my time. Like your colleague said, quality over quantity. Otherwise, I could buy hundreds. What's the point of being a busy fool?
I have been that busy fool at times. You know, when you set out what's going to be a profit, and when it's changed, it's sink or swim. You've got to do what you've got to do. And if there is a delay for whatever reason, you know, it could be a design error, and then your contractor's got the wrong instruction, and you've either got to help him to get it right, or are you going to suffer a different way? You have to do it yourself. And, you know, I've done all of these things.
But sometimes the delay can work in your favour. Like I did a development in Altrincham, Wharf Road, and initially on the financial appraisal were like £350 per square foot. The development was delayed by a year because of the planning.
Yeah.
And when it came to selling, we sold it for £420.
Wow.
So the point I'm making, the delays can actually sometimes the prices go up, and you can command more money. So it's a bit of luck as well.
It is, but usually when you do an apartment block, you sell in advance. And any upside goes to the person who already secured it and already purchased it, because you want to know you've sold a percentage of them to pin your finance to fund the block and so on. But yes, certainly with a row of houses or a housing estate, you can build 10, be selling them and steadily go to the rest of the site. But you do obviously pay for that when you...
And once you sell stuff, Gary, then during the ground rent and the service charge, do you sell that to a specialist company? Sure.
Usually, yes. Yeah, so there's some good companies there that specialise in combination of obviously buying the ground rents off you, which of course has all changed now since the land reform.
Yeah, the King Charles, he's introduced, all ground rent will be abolished.
Yeah.
So that hopefully increase values.
Well, I suppose, yes, it's an Englishman's home is his castle.
Yes.
And then you have some silly lease on it that restricts you from changing the kitchen.
Yeah, exactly.
So all of that's stopped.
Especially in London.
It's still rules.
Especially in London.
Yeah.
Grosvenor Estates, there's so many restrictions. I've got apartments there.
Yeah.
You can't swing a cat in there without the permission.
Yeah. Did you get that permission for that? In Grosvenor Place?
No, I didn't. Gary, one last question before we bring this podcast to an end. You've done a lot of developments. You bought properties in Knightsbridge, you bought properties in Hale, Altrincham, Reddish, Manchester. What do you look for? This is a very key question for up-and-coming property developers. What do you look for in a property? Do you look for the location, or do you look clearly for the profit? So suddenly, if I came and gave you 10 sites across the country, from London to Birmingham to Manchester to South Manchester, how do you know that I'm going to buy here? Do you say, okay, this site will give me more profit, or do you actually like the location?
Very good questions, and I think it depends where you are in your career. If you've got enough money to go and put a deposit down on a terrace house in any area that you feel comfortable with, it's an opportunity. If you're buying a development and it's more of a medium-term prospect, then you want to look at what's happening in that area. Is there going to be a greater demand? Can you see any openings? And for me, I've always sort of been very excited about the next project. And if you're halfway through a project and it's going wrong, you have to just go through with it and get it sorted, if you can.
You have to finish the marathon, don't you?
Yeah.
You can't stop the race halfway through.
You may have third parties that stop you doing that if banks are involved and stuff like that. But generally, you're up to get it finished and do a good job.
Because there's reputational damage as well. You want to finish.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's. I do feel though, when you've sort of got this inspiration of the next site, it's not difficult to work out, well, is that going to be a good area? What's the current demand? And how can I create a USP with the design? So I suppose it answers all of those points. I once went to buy land in Milan because I got carried away with branding. I thought I could make almost like a Fendi handbag style apartment block.
Yeah.
But the problem is in Milan, I just don't look like the mafia, so nobody takes me seriously. But when I went to do work in The Hague and Rotterdam and Copenhagen, they liked me. They welcomed me. And so there's a lot to be said. What feels right for you? Not all areas. It's not about doing everything.
It's about the energy and everything.
Yeah.
Good. All right.
By the way, I will be going back to Milan at some point.
To build that Fendi handbag.
Yeah.
But also, like, for example, what I've learned in my career, like, for example, when I buy units in London, I see how far it is to get to prime central London and the tram line, what zone it's on, so location. Like, Altringham's gone through the roof because that tram gets you to Manchester in 15 minutes and the Altrincham markets. So I think accessibility to motorways and to train stations and the transport links are very important, and schools.
Yeah.
So location's key for that point of view. Mm-hmm. And also, obviously, it's about numbers as well, because if you're not going to make money, you wouldn't bother buying the site. Mm-hmm. Do you not agree with that, Gary?
I do agree with that. And I think it's back to, if you were a small operation, buying one simple house, creating a nice concept about the extension at the back or, wonderful colour scheme, few features, you can make money.
Yes.
Because you don't have any operating costs as such. But if you've got, an operation cost to cover, then you need to sort of develop where you can create enough units to cover all of that and to make it all work for everybody involved. I'm thinking really, though, it's got to be exciting for some young people to be involved in property. If it's just buying 2 or 3 properties and steadily creating that, sort of that muscle, that sort of decision-making muscle to study, buy an investment, do without having that latest car, add that money to your deposit, get the next one. And to some people it might not make sense, but generally I remember thinking, many a story, my lovely granddad would always say, oh, we could have bought that farm for 3,000.
Yeah.
We could have bought that. Oh, could have bought that then 15 years ago. We'd have bought that for 10,000. Why didn't we?
So opportunity cost, being at the right place at the right time. But also, Gary, because we're seasoned practitioners, we've got a track record, and banks throw money at us. They give us money, even high net worth investors do. But the common question I'm asked by a lot of young entrepreneurs, that they find it hard to get money because they haven't got the track record. So what would you tell that young Mr. Smith or Mr. Jones who's 21, he's only got one house, and he goes to a bank and said, give me the money to do up this house, or I want to buy this building and make 4 apartments, small developer. Banks don't really, because they'll say, what's your track record? How did you get on the ladder? What's your experience there?
Yeah. Well, a couple of ways. I mean, obviously, you can't take no for an answer. You've got to go forward.
Yes.
But you've got to be realistic as well. And whilst you say that, it's often easier for a person who's got a regular income, as young as they might be, to get a mortgage on a house, a regular mortgage, and do that one. Let the one that you live in be the one that you first do.
And it's tax-free as well when they sell it.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously you can't keep doing that, but you can be strategic. You could go to your next one, and it's a bigger one, and so on.
Work your way up the ladder, you mean?
Yeah, and that will give you a lot of experience. I always remember Gary Neville gave a very good example at a talk one evening, and it was to say to a young person, be a project manager of your own bedroom and do it up and design it how you want it to be. And you've got all of those decisions to make the same as when you do your first place up. Coming back to your question, though, you've got to take it steady at first. You're going to do one place up. You might think, oh, well, or most people might think that's easy doing one place. But when you've not done it before, you've got to ease into it. And then you get on with another one. And then at some point, if that deal's right for 4 units, there's probably some close people around you, if you couldn't do it on your own with a bank, to get involved with you, because you recognise it.
Friends will make a syndicate of people.
Yes,
everyone pulls in and buys it together.
We can get mixed up with so many people involved, and you think, why are you doing it? But at the same time, it's not about. That's not the only deal. So if you do that one nicely, there's another deal, and so on. And eventually you'll get to that one that's the one that's in your ambitions to achieve.
Good, nice. So now we're going to bring the podcast to an end, Gary. I must thank you for your time, because I know you're very busy. I understand you're going to the Peak District now.
Yes, correct.
For a walk. How many steps are you going to do?
Oh, I don't know. Probably an hour and 15 minutes quick circuit. So it's half walking, half running. And
that's why you look so sexy and handsome.
Oh, you're outrageous. Thank you.
But Gary, I must say that health is very important, and I like the way you look after your health. You go for exercise, you take care of that beautiful hair that I'm envious of. I wish I had hair flowing like that.
Do you want me to cut some pieces off? You can transplant them on.
Yeah, but mine's black, yours is brighter blonde.
I've seen you with all coloured hair over the years.
But so health is very important, taking care of yourself. So you look after your health, the ice cubes, the hair conditioner, the facials, the walks. So Gary, what advice would you give to people about looking after yourself, health and aesthetics? What's advice? Because that's very important. That's the foundation of any business.
Simple routines and follow them. And we always, what you're going to do, what you did do, what you should have done. So if you don't beat yourself up if you haven't just got it right. Nobody gets it just right all the time. And you've just got to keep trying. And we're all different. So some of us might like to go running. Some might like to go cycling. Some might want to just do walking. What makes you feel good? What makes you feel inside that you're doing the right things?
So have a balance, basically have a balance, Gary.
Yeah.
So now we'll bring the podcast to an end. From Bricks to Riches, I'd like to thank you for listening, and everyone have a wonderful day. Thank you again, Gary.
Lovely, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, God bless.